You ready, Randy? Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 16, 2023. Message number 364, third reading passed. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. Senate File number 7, definition of opiate antagonist, amendment, ayes 61, noes 1. Message number 366, Senate File 55, Chancery Court vacancies, extension amendments, ayes 59, noes 3. Message number 367, Senate File number 69, Electronic Records Retention, ayes 62. Message number 368, Senate File 139, Unlawful Use of a Charge Card or Debit Card, ayes 62. Message number 369, Senate File 173, Financial Institutions Similar Names, ayes 62. Message number 370, Senate File 40, Federal Political Action Committee's reports, ayes 38, noes 24. Message number 365, February 16, 2023, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 10, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 39, noes 23. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 371, Mr. President, Senate File 37, Podiatry Medical Services Medicaid, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 37, noes 25. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 372, Senate File 43, EMS districts, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 37, noes 25. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and do the reports from standing committees. That way you can get those bills going right now.
February 15, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 67, engrossed. Special license plate decals, women veterans, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman. February 16, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 279, Voter Identification Requirements, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 148, Airport Liquor Licenses Amendment, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Landon, and Scott. Conflict, Senator Case. Senator Landon, Acting Chair. February 16, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 134, engrossed, Alcohol Sales to Licensees, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Landon, and Scott. Conflict, Senator Case. Senator Landon, Acting Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 284, Collection Agency Regulation, Debt Buyers, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Landon, Acting Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 99, engrossed, Property Tax Refund Program, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Ellis, Garou, Jones, and Schuler. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Signing of enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 30, originally Senate File 68.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 30, being Original Senate File 68, an act relating to prescriptive easements, establishing prescriptive easements for water conveyances, providing requirements for the width and use of a prescriptive easement as specified, requiring the state engineer's office to post an informational document on its website, providing notice to purchasers, and specifying applicability.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 30, originally Senate File Number 68. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 31, originally Senate File 173.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 31, being Original Senate Files 173, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance, modifying requirements for approval of applications for proposed financial institutions with similar names to existing financial institutions.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 31, originally Senate File 173. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act 32, originally Senate File 139.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 32, being Original Senate File 139, an act relating to crimes and offenses, expanding the offense of unlawful use of a credit card to include a charge card and debit card, providing definitions and providing penalties.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act 32, originally Senate File 139. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act 33, originally Senate File 69.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 33, being Original Senate File 69, an act relating to courts, providing for the digitizing and retention of court records as specified, and striking obsolete language.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act 33, originally Senate File 69. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act 34, originally Senate File 55.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 34, being Original Senate File 55, an act relating to courts, amending and requirements for filling Chancery Court vacancies.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act 34, originally Senate File 55. I have so signed. Enrolled Act Number 35, Senate Enrolled Act Number 35, originally Senate File 40.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 35, being Original Senate File 40, an act relating to campaign practices, specifying that federal political action committees are not required to file contribution and expenditure reports if the contributions and expenditures of the committee are exclusively related to federal candidates or issues.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act 35, originally Senate File 40. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 36, originally Senate File Number 7.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 36, being Original Senate File 7, an act relating to public health and safety, amending the definition of opiate antagonist under the Emergency Administration of Opiate Antagonist Act.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 36, originally being Senate File Number 7. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act Number 26, originally a House Bill 175.
House Enrolled Act Number 26, being Original House Bill 175, an act relating to student attendance, modifying the duties of local boards of trustees, modifying excused absences for events associated with the state fair.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act Number 26, originally House Bill 175. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act Number 25, originally House Bill 79.
House Enrolled Act Number 25, being Original House Bill 79, an act relating to elections, providing that a concealed carry permit is acceptable identification for purposes of in-person voter identification requirements.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 25, originally House Bill number 79. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 24, originally House Bill 13.
House Enrolled Act Number 24, being original House Bill 13, an act relating to children, clarifying the duties, powers, and authority of the Office of Guardian Ad Litem by amending references from the Guardian Ad Litem program to the Office of Guardian Ad Litem and specifying applicability.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 24, originally House Bill number 13. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 23, originally House Bill 181.
House Enrolled Act Number 23, being original House Bill 181, an act relating to gaming requiring permitting and licensure for online sports wagering as specified, specifying fees, specifying persons subject to criminal background checks for online sports wagering, specifying limitations and procedures on revenue calculation for purposes of remitting online sports wagering revenue to the Gaming Commission, amending requirements for application review for online sports wagering permits and licenses, and making conforming amendments.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 23, originally House Bill 181. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 22, originally House Bill 61.
House Enrolled Act Number 22, being original House Bill 61, an act relating to environmental quality, authorizing the governor to begin negotiations with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to seek an agreement for the state to assume regulation of source material recovered from any mineral resources processed primarily for the purposes other than obtaining the source material content, authorizing the governor to negotiate and enter into a final agreement with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, providing definitions, providing for the Department of Environmental Quality to administrate the agreement, providing rulemaking authority, requiring the Department of Environmental Quality to adopt fees as specified, making conforming amendments, and providing an appropriation.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 22, originally House Bill 61. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 21, originally House Bill 20.
House Enrolled Act Number 21, being original House Bill 20, an act relating to state lands requiring notice and opportunity to comment before completing an exchange and specifying applicability.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 21, originally being House Bill 20. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 20, originally being House Bill number 18.
House Enrolled Act Number 20, being original House Bill 18, an act relating to missing person alert systems, amending duties for the Office of Homeland Security and Highway Patrol for emergency alert communications networks, amending state cooperation with federal, tribal, and local law enforcement for alert systems, and providing a definition.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 20, originally House Bill number 18. I have so signed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business consideration, bills on general file. Senator McEwen.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor, please?
May.
We have some people down from Campbell County kind of watching us and went to a committee meeting today that I'd like to recognize. Chelsea Collier and Mark and Patty Junick. Here.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. Senator Schuler, welcome back. Did we send a message to the House about our chirpers?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I think I'd rather hear the clapping than the chirping, but let's come to order. You betcha. Okay, the first bill this afternoon for our consideration is House Bill 62. Will the House bill read the clerk? The clerk read the bill, please.
House Bill 62, Open Banking, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act related to banking. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? I'm not sure if are you standing, Senator Rothfuss, or are you not standing? Okay. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that do so a favorable motion of House Bill 62 and turn it over to Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I bring House Bill 62, Open Banking. This is a product from the interim of the Blockchain, Financial Technology, and Digital Innovation Task Force Select Committee that was then brought to the Joint Minerals Committee. Anything in Title 13 that relates to banking and trusts needs to go through the Minerals Committee for sponsorship. So we worked with the Minerals Committee on this legislation and bring it to Committee of the Whole at this point. Madam Chairman, open banking is effectively a financial technology innovation that we explored during the interim. And the concept is to provide third-party providers with the opportunity to use banking information or subscribe to certain information that is approved by the customers, the consumers, to allow enhanced services, potentially linking of financial services, whether that's from banking to insurance to potential other interests. And Madam Chairman, this is a technology that's used throughout the rest of the world, but there's not a lot of headway into open banking within the United States banking system at this point in time. Madam Chairman, we thought it would be good for Wyoming to once again be a leader, and we are looking through this legislation to start a process of developing open banking regulation and to provide our consumers with the option, if they so choose, to utilize open banking systems and frameworks, as well as for our banks optionally to utilize this resource. So nothing is mandatory for anyone, and I'll briefly walk through the bill. It's a relatively short bill because it's effectively a starting point. Madam Chairman, going on to page 2. There's just a few additional definitions. Customer data is pretty obvious and straightforward. But one of the things that we want to make sure is at the foundation of any open banking work that we do is consumer protection. And that consumer protection will begin and center around express written consent for any authentication or authorization that's used through this process. So you see that definition in Romanet 2. Romanet 3 looks at open banking itself, which you see here means providing access directly or indirectly to customer data from the customer's bank to a third-party financial service provider with the express written consent of the customer and through the use of application programming interfaces. So this provides automation if the customer chooses it, and if the bank offers it. It does not require that of anyone, and it requires express written consent as the underlying approval process. We see on page 2 and onto page 3 simply an allowance, an explicit allowance that open banking is authorized and that the Division of Banking will provide regulation for it, as we see in the B paragraph, and that under the C paragraph that shall comply with any applicable state and federal laws and regulations. Madam Chairman, I'll note that currently nationally a national regulatory entity is trying to take on open banking, but for over 10 years now, they've been working on rules to provide a framework. This gives us an opportunity to be a leader in this space, to potentially be a stakeholder in open banking work at the national and federal level, and hopefully shape and craft it and give us a little bit of edge. So, Madam Chairman, the last thing I'd point out, which I think is a really important point of the way this legislation is structured and is very much intentional by the Select Committee, is Section 2, which is the effective date, on to Section 3. And a key provision here is that this goes into effect July 1, 2024, not 23, and for good reason. We would be the first state, and there's that chirp, thank you, House. We would be the first state with an open banking framework. It's going to take a while to put that together, to develop sound regulatory structure that will provide effective and sufficient consumer protection. And we want a full interim to continue to work with the Division of Banking, a legislative session to then reflect and see what statutory changes need to be made, and then another interim period of time to work on the rules and regulations to ensure that this is right. So again, it's by intent that we're doing it slowly and methodically. We need that much lead time as the first state in the country that would be working on this. But there is good guidance and precedents. Other countries already engage in this. Some countries require it, in fact, Madam Chairman, where it's a thou shalt, not a thou may type approach to statute. In some circumstances, there is not express written consent. In fact, there's resistance to that. So I can tell you at the federal level, it would be preferable for some entities that are working on open banking space to just basically have that long laundry list of approval material that you don't really read as you're scrolling through it, and then you sort of click something at the bottom. We are trying very much to provide better consumer protection for that. So once again, we're trying to regulate to enable, provide a sound consumer protection regulatory structure while leading in the industry and trying to move us into the allowance and provision of open banking. And Madam Chairman, the last thing I would say is this applies to all of our state chartered banks. So it would provide an additional tool for our special purpose depository institutions as they're looking to develop their business model and operate potentially in all states, but we know it would also apply to our state chartered banks that are operating here in Wyoming as well as regionally. So again, Madam Chairman, it's the idea of us trying to once again be a leader in this innovative space and be the first state to offer these services not only to our consumers, but to our banks.
Discussion? Senator Furphy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, in committee, I was a no vote on this, but I have to say a lot of changes have occurred in this bill that I'm feeling more positive about. First of all, when initially presented, it was an opt-out situation. So if you're a consumer in the bank, you had to contact the bank and say, no, I don't want my financial information shared with others. Now, as you can see, Madam Chair, it's opt-in. So if you want your financial information to be shared with other financial institutions and services, then fine, you sign up and allow that to happen. Why would you want to do that? The concept being, in other countries, it provides more competition and you may get better rates, etc., if you allow others to see your information and sort of bid on your banking services. So that's the concept, but now it's an opt-in. I'm much more comfortable with that. The other issue I had was there's no fiscal note here. And we're asking, as you can see on line 14 of page 2, we're asking the banking commissioner to adopt and develop all the rules necessary for this program. So I thought, wow, that's going to take a lot of work to do, but in visiting with them, they think they can absorb that in their current workload. So I'm much more comfortable with that. So at this point, now with all those positive changes, I'm in favor of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion? Okay, sounds like we're ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Dockstedter's motion that when the chairman of the whole rises to report that it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 62, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. I believe the ayes have it. House Bill 62, you want division? Okay, we can do that. All right, all those in favor, please rise. Okay, all those opposed, please rise. Oh, there was one more for. So it'll be one more, President.
She's recounting, so if you want to vote aye. No. This is, no, just kidding. Sorry.
These are the noes now. So it's 15-13. Okay, the vote is 15-13. So that bill has passed. House Bill 62 has passed the Committee of the Whole. All right, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 56. Will the reading clerk please read the bill? Oh, sorry.
House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools, sponsored by Representative Brown, an act relating to education. It was referred to Committee Number 8, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Kolb, acting chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Boner?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 56. I'll go ahead and explain the bill. Madam Chairwoman, what you have here is a bill that would formalize a optional program that any of our schools could participate in that supports children of military members. It's called a Purple Star School Program. And so you'll see that basically the premise is if a school complies with sort of a laundry list of different criteria meant to make things easier for our military students, that they would receive this designation. So completely permissive, but a positive step, I think, in helping some of our military dependents in our schools. So on page 1, you'll see a military connected student means that they're a dependent of a current and former member of the armed services. That includes the National Guard or Reserve, including those who were killed in the line of duty. The department here, that being the Wyoming Department of Education, can designate a school if they comply with the following requirements. And starting on page 2, line 11, you'll see what those requirements are. They have to designate, first of all, a staff member who can identify military-connected students, serve as a point of contact, and assist in developing services for that school. They also have to maintain on the school website resources for military-connected students. Relates to relocation, academic planning, counseling and support services available to military-connected students, and also make sure that they have the name and contact information of the liaison officer within the school. Also on top of page 4, they have to maintain a transition program. It can be led by the students that assist our military students when they're moving into a new school, as happens very often with these military families. They should offer professional development for staff and do at least one of the following. They have to have a resolution adopted by the local school board, provide a recognition of Military Child of the Month, or partner with a local military installation to have folks come in and be a guest speaker and things like that. So a school may partner with their local district. They can do it by themselves. That's up to them. And so basically that's a bill. Like I said, this is a permissive program that would allow for greater support of our military kids and our public school system. I urge your support of the bill and would stand for any questions.
Questions or discussion? Anyone? Okay, question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 56, please say aye. Those opposed, say no. Okay, House Bill 56 has passed the committee of the whole. That was an easy one. All right, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 83. Reading clerk, please read the bill.
House Bill 83, Tribal Agreements to Hunt and Fish, sponsored by Representative Larson, an act relating to game and fish, was referred to Committee Number 6, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Guru, and Schuler. No Senators Ellis and Jones. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Okay. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 83 do pass. There's a standing committee amendment. I'd ask that it be read in.
House Bill 83, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 3, after.
Senator Ellis?
Madam Chair, I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 83. And for an explanation of the bill and the amendment, I'd ask that you call on Senator Case.
Senator Case?
That one I wasn't expecting, Madam Chairwoman. So I'm actually opposed to this bill, and maybe we could lay it back till we find somebody to give a positive discussion. My understanding was that some of our leadership was going to present this bill. So would it be permissible to lay this back to today's actions, just till we figure out who's going to present it?
Madam,
I can tell you my point of view, Madam Chairwoman, but I don't think that's fair.
Madam Chair?
Senator Ellis?
Maybe the Committee of the Whole could stand at ease for just till the sound of the gavel. I think the next bill we have is the revisor bill, which I think is the cutoff of our workday. So maybe just stand at ease for a second.
Where's Driscoll?
Let's go to Vice President Hicks, excuse me, Majority Floor Leader Hicks. What is your suggestion?
Madam Chairman, I move that we lay House Bill 83 back for one day. No, we can't do that in Committee of the Whole. That's right. So, Madam Chairman, just stand at ease of the sound of the gavel. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Stand at ease for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry.
Who's got it? It's TRW.
You guys tell me when you're ready. Do we have a quorum yet? If the senators will start coming back to their chair, we're going to go ahead and get started again. Yeah. That would be perfect. Thank you.
Committee of the Whole will please come back to order. 83. And we are on House Bill 83. I believe that has been read in prior to pause. And at this point in time, we'll go to Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. New Chairman. I appreciate you taking over the chair. I bring you House Bill 83, Tribal Agreements to Hunt and Fish. Just to give you a little background, this has been a work in progress since probably last spring. Some of the stakeholders that are involved, and as well as the governor's office, have been working on this particular legislation. And really, to not get into the weeds, if you just look at the first page of the bill, this is an act relating to game and fish, authorizing the governor to negotiate and enter in agreements with the tribes concerning hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering rights, claims as specified, providing for report, providing for rulemaking. That's really it in a nutshell. What we're doing is we're just allowing the governor, we're giving him the option to negotiate with the tribes if they so wish. And how this came about apparently is we've had some issues in the past with court cases where there have been, I think maybe some of you have heard about the Herrera case, where there was some hunting on some unoccupied lands, and then there were some issues with states' rights and whether or not we were handling the conservation issues and so on and so forth. There have been a few other cases as well that have gone to the courts over this. And so this was just a good faith effort to give our governor authority to negotiate into agreements with our tribes. And it does say tribes, so it doesn't necessarily choose one or the other or any of the others that might have an interest. I think in testimony, we had some tribes early on apparently that were on board with this bill, and then maybe a little later on weren't quite as enamored with it. But I think that the key here, the key issue, is that the tribes do not have to negotiate if they don't choose to. And here's what happens if they don't, and something happens with one of their tribal members, and again, if they're off the reservation hunting in unoccupied lands, we could end up in another court case, and we really don't want that to happen. So this is just something I think that both the governor's office and even our tribes, I think, they have issues, and we want to be able to deal with them. And this is really all this bill does. Is if you can take a look, I mean, you can go page by page. There are some sideboards throughout. It basically talks over on page 2 about if the agreement is inconsistent with state statutes, and it could be, the governor won't enter into that agreement unless the tribe has adopted a game code or other enforceable mechanisms. If they find that the tribe has the ability to effectively enforce provisions of its game against violators. And you can just keep reading on page 3. Again, if the tribe agrees that tribal members who do not possess a valid license shall be subject to regulation under applicable state laws for acts committed outside the boundaries of the reservation, and so on and so forth. It talks about different things that might be in there as sideboards. So really, there is one exception on page 4, actually a couple of exceptions. If there's some issues where there's ceremonial, traditional, or religious purposes involved, that could be an exception. So really, it's just a matter of trying to, once they enter into a negotiation, if they so choose again, then it gives the governor as well as the tribe the opportunity to try and come up with some agreements that both sides can live with. And again, there's over on page 5, nothing in this section shall grant any person the right to hunt, fish, or trap, or gather on private property without the permission of the owner. That stays in place. So we did have some amendments, and with that, I think I will turn that over to Senator Ellis. to talk about the First Amendment, if that's all right?
Thank you, Senator Schuler. Senator Ellis, over to you on Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 would deal with paragraph A on page 2. It would essentially have the paragraph read, "The governor, on behalf of the state, is authorized to negotiate and enter into an agreement between the state and a tribe as provided in Wyoming Statute 20-5-202A Romanet 6." That's language borrowed later on in the bill on, I think, page 5. And then, a tribe, that's a definition of a federally recognized tribe. And it would then say, concerning off-reservation hunting treaty rights on lands located within the state. So it would remove fishing, trapping, or gathering. If you look at the Herrera case that was mentioned before, that the treaty language had to do with hunting. It didn't mention fishing, trapping, or gathering. We heard testimony in our committee that gathering usually isn't a prohibited act. That tends to be more of an issue when it comes to things like national parks and other federal enclaves. And so just trying to simplify that language a little bit to narrow it into what we're actually getting after. And then the conforming amendment would be to delete the definition then of gathering on page 5, as well as the reference to tribes, since we reinserted it into the paragraph. So that's what the Standing Committee Amendment did. Happy to answer questions. If not, call for the question.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Any discussion on Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 83? Discussion or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 83, please say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 83, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. Back to you, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a Committee of the Whole amendment. I'd ask that it be read in.
House Bill 83, Standing Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 1, line 4, after.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 83. Before we jump into what the amendment does, I want to explain the purpose of why I signed onto this bill and why I'm bringing this amendment. As was mentioned, there was a situation years ago where you had a tribal member from another state who was hunting in Wyoming in a national forest and didn't have a license or didn't have a hunting permit to take an elk. He was cited by our Game and Fish for illegally taking wildlife, subject to court proceedings, criminal charges, and he asserted that he had a tribal treaty right to hunt in that area. It did go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the court found that the creation of the state of Wyoming and the creation of the national forest did not extinguish his off-reservation hunting rights. So he had a right to be there. However, the court didn't really define what the parameters much beyond that. It said that the state had an interest in conserving wildlife, and it said that the tribal rights were, he was allowed to hunt in unoccupied areas. So after the case came out, a lot of people were wondering, well, what is an unoccupied area? What does that mean exactly? And so rather than entering into negotiations at the time, the state of Wyoming decided to continue litigating the case on some other really technical and important, but very technical legal arguments. So in recent years, and this past year in particular, the governor has engaged in conversations with one of our tribes that have a treaty right. And you should know that this is specific to only those tribes that are signatories to some of these treaties. That instead of having to rely on tribal members to test the bounds of what would constitute an unoccupied area, subjecting themselves to potential criminal charges, that maybe our state and these tribes could work together to resolve some of those issues. So this bill was brought in a place of really good faith. It was initially supported by one of our tribes, and since that time, there had been very vocal concerns expressed about the bill, specifically for paragraph C, which starts on page 2, line 16. If you look at this is what we've started referring to as the sideboards. The governor wants some direction from the legislature on what this agreement might look like. So you'll see the language on the bottom of page 2, all the way through page 3, onto page 4, and then going on to page 5 that really set out some of those sideboards. However, in looking at this and having other tribes feedback, I think there was a sentiment that maybe the state of Wyoming was already entering the negotiations with an advantage or a leg up. Specifically, if you look at the language on top of page 3, here it says the tribe, one of the conditions, the tribe has adopted a game code or other similar code, similar to what Wyoming has. And so they said, why would our code have to align with yours? What about your code aligning with ours? On the bottom of page 3, you'll see additional language. Here, this is what the tribe has to agree to before we even start talking. On to page 4. It has to align its hunting seasons with ours. It has to abide by hunting, fishing, or trapping areas set by our gaming commission, or our Game and Fish Commission. And so just some of that language in those provisions were really not supported by a lot of the tribes, including the tribe, and I think that's what really kind of led to the downfall of the discussions with this bill. So what the Committee of the Whole amendment seeks to do, Mr. Chairman, would be, in my view, remove Section C, but to allow the state to have the opportunity, the legislature to review this, it would insert on paragraph B, line 12, that the agreement would need to be signed by the governor of Wyoming, the governor of the tribe that was entering into the agreement, and ratified by the majority of both chambers of the legislature before it would take effect. So, Mr. Chairman, I will convey to you, I don't think this solves the problems or allays all of the concerns that the tribes have with this bill. I do think it improves it. But that, in reflecting on the feedback that we've received, I thought it would be appropriate to at least bring this issue to the body for its consideration. The other thing the amendment would do would repeal this act entirely to December 31st, 2027. In my view, we have a governor who is very interested in pursuing these negotiations, but beyond that, we don't know who our future governor might be. We don't know if they'll have this interest. Certainly, if we wanted to look at this issue in the future, we could, but just didn't want to tie the hands of that future governor. And so there is a repealer in there that would effectively get rid of the statute once our current governor leaves office. So with that, happy to answer any questions about the amendment.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. We are on Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, corrected copy to House Bill 83, tribal agreements to hunt and fish. Senator Case.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment. I commend the good chairman of the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. So in speaking about this amendment, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the background here. This, of course, is my district, is where these people are located. It's a very proud thing for me to be able to represent them, Mr. Chairman. These people are sovereign. They have rights that predate our granting of statehood. And the Wind River Reservation was established with the 1868 treaty. It's had a long history. It's been diminished a couple of times. People don't always feel good about that diminishment, but they are proud to be also citizens of Wyoming, citizens of the United States, and Mr. Chairman, when the business council of one of the tribes on the reservation, who happened to be their original occupants of the reservation, did see merit in this. And I will say that the inception of this started back in a Select Committee on Tribal Relations, where we were just brainstorming, having a good conversation out loud about what are the consequences of this case involving off-treaty hunting rights. What will that mean as we go forward? How will we deal with this? And there was enthusiasm among members of that tribe at the committee as we talked about what that might look like, that we could accommodate tribal off-reservation hunting, but that we could do it in a regulated manner, in a way that protected the resource, in a way that allowed for overlapping and concurrent seasons, in a way that looked at the take in any areas. All these things we thought we could maybe jointly come up with that. It left the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. The proposal cooked around a bit, and our chief executive, of course, is very interested. He doesn't want to be on it's not a good policy for Wyoming to be behind the 8 ball on this, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's better to have friendly cooperation and figure this out rather than have it be imposed on us by another court decision. And a court decision where we would be litigating, trying to limit, for example, tribal off-reservation hunting. And we may not be successful. We haven't been successful so far. In a lot of litigation, we haven't been that successful as a state. So there is an interest, and I really do appreciate the effort of His Excellency's office to try to bring this forward. And, you know, originally with some indications that they thought this could work, let's find a deal, let's find a bill that'll authorize it. That sounded pretty good. But really, when you step back and you look at the words that are written in this bill, it's very prescriptive to what the tribe has to do. And I think folks thought, well, it's just an agreement, we don't have to agree to it. And I think that's some of the more sophisticated thinking perhaps from the leaders of the tribe. They thought, we could work around this. You know, because the truth is, in the end, it has to be an agreement, we both have to agree. But I'll tell you what's really happened is that tribal members have looked at this and they have become very upset. In fact, there was a protest in the capital city on the reservation yesterday, Mr. Chairman. Members are very upset. And really, when you stop and you take a breath and you go, this doesn't feel collaborative. It doesn't. It feels like the state of Wyoming is going to tell the tribes what their game code is. Well, Mr. Chairman, they already have a game code. They've had lots of experience with having a game code. You know, making them conform, that's one thing. But I definitely get where they're coming from. And the consequence, the leaders of the tribe asked me not to support this bill. Asked other senators here not to support this bill. And I've heard from many, many tribal members who are very upset and feel that the state of Wyoming, instead of approaching this from a gentle, let's get together and talk point of view, it's being very prescriptive and saying you have to do it this way. And I think there's just been some misinterpretation. Mr. Chairman, seems to be my day for misinterpretation, and I apologize for that. But I think this amendment is a good one, and it's a chance to maybe go forward. There is an issue, though. The more open-ended we leave it, the more likely that it's going to require ratification by the legislature. But the more prescriptive we make it, the more we can just say, okay, go to the agreement, as long as it follows this, we don't need to look at it again. And I can understand that this could backfire in a way. For example, if the governor's office has to negotiate with, but has to bring it back to the Senate or back to the legislature, then they don't really have the authority to negotiate in a way. So I am supporting this. I think that this bill, unfortunately, is probably just one of those things that happen that gets all messed up, and it's better to start over. So, but I'm going to support this amendment, and then I'll probably try to help us to start over.
Thank you, Senator Case. Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Driscoll, Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On and opposed to the amendment. Good arguments. I think the bringers have really good arguments, and they're solid, but they're brought from the perspective of one tribe. There's more than one tribe in the Treaty 1868, and this was a reach out from our chief executive to us to help put a framework together that he may be able to negotiate with one or more of those tribes. And I have the deepest respect for him. I've spent a lot of time with him, and I have the deepest respect I do for the treaties, and I agree fully with the speaker as far as where they fall. But they've got to have a place to start for the office downstairs. They've got to have a starting place. And what this does, this was where they, along with legal counsel, saw what the sideboard should look like. The part we're not talking about is for the tribes, for what they want. They easily can bring whatever they want to us. And that's how most agreements happen, is you reach out, and obviously, at least for one of them, they don't like what this one looks like, and that's fair game. But generally what you have in that case is they reach out and say, well, this is what we'd like to see. And we're really not seeing that. What we're seeing is we don't like it. And this helps facilitate, regardless, the ability to make that decision to get somewhere in between them. You have to start somewhere. And the office downstairs really doesn't have the full authority to go do anything without some type of approval out of this body. They're not allowed just to go do this. So what we're doing is giving them the ability to go make the run. My guess is this isn't the final. It'll be brought back and honed more and done. But I will tell you, they with council are who brought this. It wasn't us pushing it on them. They brought it to us and said, this is what we'd like to have to start on our end of it. And I think we owe it to that side to do the best we can to support facilitation of an agreement. And I'd ask you to resist the amendment. Let's leave it the way they thought they needed it to do what they need to do and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, corrected copy to Senate File 83. Going back to Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that anyone who's listening to this debate closely can appreciate how delicate and difficult and tricky working on this bill has been. But I just want to emphasize that if we leave the bill as it is in place, what we heard from, I think, 3 separate tribes who are signatories to 2 treaties that are at stake or involved in Wyoming was that they do not like this. So if we leave it, and it was Section C that tended to cause the most concern. So we could leave Section C in place, defeat the amendment, but this is then, I feel like this will become an academic exercise for our governor. He'll have this authority, but no tribe coming to the table. And maybe that's what we want, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to offer that to you, where I'm trying to give the governor a tool that maybe actually would entice some of the tribes, maybe not these councils this year, but perhaps in a future year, to relook at this language and say, actually, since there aren't so many prescriptive sideboards in place at the outset of the negotiation, that maybe they'll take a look at it in a future year and actually want to come to our governor and talk. But as it is right now, I just have the concern that if we leave Section C and some of that language, additional language in there, that forecloses that opportunity. So again, I just appreciate all your thoughtful, your thoughts on this to the Senate. This is a tough issue, and we'll keep talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Any further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, corrected copy? Further discussion, seeing none. All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, corrected copy to House Bill 83, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. All right, well, I shouldn't have been in doubt. Those opposed, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 83 has failed by your vote of 9 to 19. I swear it sounded similar. We have one more Committee of the Whole Amendment, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. Let's have that read in.
House Bill 83, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, delete.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 83. I'm not going to go through the arguments, pretty much got there. What this amendment does is returns the bill back to its original form, the way it was intended from the chief executive down below, and I'd ask you to give him what he needs to have to go forward. With that, I'd stand for question and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. We are on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. Senator Ellis, to you. 1 second. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment had limited the discussion to only discussing off-reservation hunting rights. That was the source of contention in the Herrera decision. That's the language used in the treaty. This additional language also includes off-reservation fishing, off-reservation trapping, and off-reservation gathering. So, things that weren't contemplated in the treaty. So this, I think, certainly gives the tribes and the governor more ability to negotiate those items, and sounds like a plan. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Any further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 83, Tribal Agreements to Hunt and Fish, say aye. Those opposed, no. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 83 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Discussion on House Bill 83. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to this bill. Represent that my constituents, the people of the Wind River Indian Reservation, particularly of one of the tribes, are adamantly against this bill. And I wish to stand here and represent their aberration for this bill, Mr. Chairman. And I wish this was going a different direction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On 4, I think all this does at the end of the day, and the testimony we got, and all that I heard is I really respect my good friend from the area that, from the Wind River area, and his concerns with and the ones he's heard from his constituents. I think all this bill does is give our chief executive a template. If our friends in any tribe want to come to the table, all they have to do is walk in the door. If they do not choose to do that, they just stay away. If they come and they say, we want to just talk about the Herrera decision and the outcroppings of that, the governor has a template to do it. If he wants to talk about further, a more global solution to challenges with hunting rights and fishing rights inside and outside the borders of the reservation, they can with this template. If they choose not to, they don't have to. That to me is all this bill does. And I can say, as far as someone who voted on it in committee, there was certainly no malice, there was no intent in any way and I only speak for myself and not any other member, or what they may or may not have said, but just to say that there was no malice, there was only an attempt to try to reach out to our friends, Mr. Chairman, our tribal friends, and say, let's talk. On and 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gru. Further discussion? Let's go to Senator Hicks, and then I'll go over to Senator Ellis.
Mr. Chairman, on and for the bill. This is just one step on a long, long journey. And we can go back, we've had competing Supreme Court cases back to Racehorse and then to Herrera. Herrera set a few sideboards out there on the necessity of conservation that still allows for tribal hunting rights. This is just the first instrument in a long journey that's going to resolve this issue. So we need to take this step, Mr. Chairman. It's the first step in trying to work with our tribal partners to come up with what is a reasonable agreement by both parties. So on and for the bill, I think we need to take this step and move this down and have the chief executive continue his discussion with those tribal members so we can hopefully at some time in my lifetime resolve this issue, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Ellis, to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, I just want to say that the intent of this was good. This came from a really positive place, and it is one of wanting to work with our tribes in a cooperative fashion. And at the end of the day, allow the legislature, the governor, and the tribes to come together and agree on these definitions rather than litigating them and letting the courts pick. However, I strongly view this not as a first step. We might perceive it as a first step, but I think we've actually taken 10 steps backward. So in its present form, this is certainly not something I can support. And I remember long ago when I was a young legislator, some of the more seasoned legislators would always say, wait until you have to vote against your own bill. And here we are today. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the thoughtful discussion, but the notion that we're taking steps forward, I just think is a false one. I think we're going to take several steps back in years of relationship rebuilding if we advance this legislation.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. On and against the bill with regret. I do feel that the bill was drafted with the best of intentions. I do feel that the intent of the drafting was to reach out and to try and work together to resolve the challenges that were raised through the Supreme Court decision and through the previous circumstances and events. But, Mr. Chairman, the reality in a negotiation between two sovereign nations is that you need to go to the negotiating table with positive engagement, with rapport, with the ability to sit down, look each other in the eye, and know that both parties or all parties are coming as equals with good intentions and good understanding. Mr. Majority Leader, regrettably, this legislation has already poisoned that well. And it's not up to us, unfortunately, to decide. A majority of this chamber voting in favor of this bill will not make it a good message. We're used to 50% plus one being correct. It's the nature of the way we do things in this chamber. But we don't have the authority to tell another sovereign nation how they are required to interpret our message. And that's the challenge of diplomacy. You don't get to do that. We don't get to tell another sovereign nation how they should feel about our legislative draft. When they respond to us by saying they have concerns, they feel that this is preordained, they feel that we're putting ourselves in a position of higher standing and that the accommodation has to come from their side, it doesn't matter what the intent was, although we should express regret for the misunderstanding of that intent. It matters what the interpretation is. We are in a position where we failed to achieve our intent of messaging. We know that we have a response from the tribes that they are oppositional to this based on its current language. And we're in a position where we need to try again. We need to reach out and figure out what this should have looked like in cooperation. What is a draft that is an appropriate way to engage with these sovereign nations? And how we can move forward in a way where we're working together, hand in hand, rather than working in opposition as they're telling us, providing feedback at this moment, at this time, that this approach is unacceptable. Why would we move forward when the communication, Mr. Chairman, is clear, unambiguous, and clearly states that this approach is unacceptable? I know the intent is to arm the governor. This does not arm the governor well. This puts us in a position as a state where the governor is going to be going into a negotiation really with a poor set of marching orders, a poor set of instructions that have already been rejected by our counterparties on and against.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. I'm honored for the bill. Honestly, I did vote for the first two amendments. I actually thought maybe it helped the bill a little bit. But I think, in the long run, really what this bill is about is offering our governor a chance to do some negotiation and to become someone who can maybe reach out and leave the door open and say, hey, let's talk and let's see if we can come up with some agreements. If without this bill, we just keep going on doing what we're doing, which is maybe there's no talk and maybe we have other issues like Herrera and we end up with people having to go through our judicial system. I don't think we want that. So really, I think all this does, it just gives the governor a little bit more leeway to say, hey, I think he's been one of the best governors we've had to be welcoming and open and to our tribes. And I've seen some real progress there from years gone by, maybe some of the best ever. So I do believe there's a good relationship with him and the tribes. And again, if they choose not to use this tool, if they choose not to enter into agreements, that's fine. But then we may end up being back in the mess we've been in. what this does, it just gives our governor a chance to open the door and say, listen, let's talk, let's see if we can work something out, let's see if we can make things better. And so I do believe it's a step forward. Thank you.
More questions? All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion that when the committee of the whole rise and support it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 83, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign? No. Division called. Those four, please rise. Those opposed? House Bill 83 has passed the committee of the whole. The vote was 18-12. Senate will stand at ease to the sound of the gavel.
Senators, if you'll Mr. Majority Floor Leader?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, we're going to do one, maybe two more bills here whenever the Senate Conference Committee on House Bill 1, the budget, gets done. We're going to go back into the Senate and they will explain that joint conference committee report on the budget, and we'll vote on that. But for right now, Madam Chairman, let's do one more bill on Committee of the Whole.
Okay, the next bill up for consideration is House Bill 279. The House Chief, read the bill.
House Bill 279, Voter Identification Requirements, sponsored by Representative Knapp, an act relating to elections. Was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Okay. Senator Boner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Committee of the Whole rise to report, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 279. To explain this bill, I believe Senator Hutchings is going to do that.
Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill was brought to us by the good Representative Knapp. Voter identification requirements. Very, very simple. On page 2, lines 10 through 12, they just want to add that if a voter comes in and asks for an absentee ballot request form, they provide identification. And there's a list of identifications that are the same as when you come in to vote. That's all the bill does. I just ask for a favorable vote on it. It's pretty simple. When you come in to ask for your ballot request form, you provide an identification if asked. Thank you.
Discussion?
Question?
Right. Okay, and also I believe I made a mistake. I think I said 276, so this
No.
is House Bill 279, okay? No, oh, okay. Senator Rothfuss?
I just do have the question of how does it work now? What is changing here? Is there no requirement? It was actually my impression that when you were going in to request an absentee ballot, I felt like you did have to provide an identification unless it's online, and then it's going to your mailing address. So my question is, how is it now relative to what's changing? And the final question I would have is, how does this affect the fact that a lot of requests for absentee ballots are done through online, where it's a verification of your residence that tends to be the key identification because it's being mailed to you, and so the assumption is that that's evidentiary. Would this eliminate for example, our elderly population's ability to do the online registration for an absentee ballot, or is that accounted for elsewhere?
Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So in committee this morning, when we heard this bill, this only applies to in-person requests for absentee by the voter themselves. It will not have any impact, the testimony was, will not have any impact to the other means by the statute provides other options for requesting absentee ballot. This does not impact those in any way, was the testimony this morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Other comments? Question, okay. Questions being called. All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 279, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. House Bill 279 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Are we doing another bill? Okay. Okay. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 134. Will the reading clerk read the bill?
House Bill 134 engrossed. alcohol sales to licensees. Was sponsored by Representative Nyman. An act relating to alcohol. Was referred to committee number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Landon, and Scott. Conflict, Senator Case. Senator Landon, acting chairman.
Okay, you heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Hicks?
Madam
Vice-
Madam
Excuse me,
Chairman,
Majority Floor Leader.
I move House Bill 134, alcohol sales and licenses, and ask for your favorable, Madam Chairman, I move House Bill 134 and ask for your favorable consideration. And for an explanation of this bill, I would ask you to call on Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow?
So, Madam Chairman, thank you. There was a bit of a mix-up. I didn't know that the chairman was off the floor. We didn't know who was making that motion. So I apologize to the good chairman and to the vice chairman of the committee that heard this bill this morning. I've learned some poor lessons in the House that you just go to your majority floor leader if you don't know what the order of business is. So, Madam Chairman, my apologies. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 134 is very simple. As you can see, turning over the bill, currently in statute, there's the allowance for a retail liquor license to get product from another retail liquor license of 9 liters. And that is to deal with a weekend rush on a particular product or some product that is new and is they want to try out before they start ordering large quantities or doing things like that. What this bill does is extend that same ability to a satellite manufacturer permit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, satellite permits are given to people who distill, Wyoming distillers, who then want to have a store somewhere in the state. Currently, you can have 2 satellite permits in the state of Wyoming. So these are local businesses who are making a product, and then they have a storefront. This would allow someone else in the neighborhood who has a liquor permit, a full retail liquor permit, to come to them and say, "Hey, I need 9 of these. I'd like to run a special this weekend. I want to try out this new product that your company is making." So, Madam Chairman, this is a small step of economic development, trying to get more things out into the hands of consumers in a simplified way. They still pay the taxes. This is not a loophole in our 3-tier system. This is just a way to accommodate unique circumstances of products and timing. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion on the bill? I'm not sure. You guys, neither one of you want to, okay. Well, I sense that we're ready for the question on this bill then. All those in favor of Senator Hicks's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 134, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay, House Bill 134 has passed the committee of the whole. And the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 148. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 148, Airport Liquor Licenses Amendment, sponsored by Representative Walters, an act relating to alcoholic beverages. Was referred to committee number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Landon, and Scott. Conflict, Senator Case. Senator Landon, chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a do pass recommendation on House Bill 148, Airport Liquor Licenses Amendment. Madam Chairman, this is a bill that closes a loophole on a bill that the Senate passed a year ago. You might remember where we carved out the opportunity for a special license to serve liquor inside the airport terminals. That was special consideration because it wouldn't use up, say, one of the bar and grill licenses in a facility that may only have limited hours during the day where they're serving commercial flights, for example. What this does, there was a plan in place for one of these licenses to be used off the terminal and maybe in some other location. And so this bill goes in and fixes what we consider to be a little bit of a loophole. And you'll find that language on page 2 of the bill. You'll notice the new language that says, sales of alcoholic liquor or malt beverages shall only be made in the terminal building and connected concourses of the airport where persons engaged in commercial air travel transfer on and off aircraft. That means behind the checkpoint, the folks that check your baggage and check you out once in a while, that's where these facilities are to be located. They're not located in the part of the terminals where private flights take place, for example. But I think everybody gets the idea on this. They're not to be used across the street to set up a full liquor license retail operations, for example. This just goes to the airports themselves. So be glad to answer any questions. Hope you'll support the bill.
Questions, discussion? I can see you're all deep in thought. All right, well, I think if we're ready for the question, all those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 148, please say aye.
Aye.
I meant aye, not hi. Those opposed, no.
Hello.
Okay, I believe that House Bill 148 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration? Oh, yes. Vice President Kinski?
Madam Chair, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Vice President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 42, do pass. House Bill 100 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 62, do pass. House Bill 56, do pass. House Bill 83, do pass amended. House Bill 279, do pass. House Bill 134 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 448, do pass. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Mr. President, I move, Mr. Vice President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
For the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. The report is adopted. Thank you, Senator Schuler.
You're welcome.
The report has been adopted. All right. President Driscoll, are you ready with the Joint Conference Committee report on HB 001, General Government Appropriations?
I am. Mr. Chairman, I would move for adoption of Joint Conference Committee.
We need to read it in. We need to read it.
All right, thank you.
Joint Conference Committee report on HB 1, General Government Appropriations.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for adoption of Joint Conference Committee 01 on House Bill 001, Government General Appropriations. Folks, this is probably the easiest that we've ever got by with the House, and it's because we did it from a pretty frugal standpoint. I'm standing here looking at one of the people. It's kind of interesting. What we really did this year was we spent $383 million, which sounds like a lot of money. but it's actually was pretty near the governor's recs. We're going to end up with somewhere between, we'll end up very near 1.3 to 1.4 billion dollars in savings coming out of this that we did not spend, which is about, for every dollar we spent, we're going to put between 350 and 370 in some type of savings. This budget does some things hasn't been done, and I'll give you a few of the balances. We're going to put $367.6 million to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and $367.6 million to the Common School Permanent Land Fund. Those are our constitutionally protected funds. Those stay forever. We can't touch them and do them. We also, under this plan, did a new thing that's been out there that's hopefully will help us do our budgets. We've went into some reserve accounts, and we funded those reserve accounts with that other chunk of the money that lays back out of that end of it. It's 735.2 in permanent savings. The K-12 and the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund were funded equally this year for the first time. We literally took our money, we split it equally, put half in the permanent fund, half in the others. It's pretty hard to say how we spent back and forth between the House, because we had done a $160 million into the governor's contingency fund, if you remember that. The House didn't do that, so they actually showed they spent $160 million less than us. So if you're looking at the figures, it's not that we were more spend-worthy than them, it's that we put another chunk of money there. You'll see as we go through, we did mess with that some. The overall net impact of it is, this is per staff, this is the most money probably in Wyoming's history that's been put in its permanence funds. And it's one of the lower spendings on a per basis as far as what we actually spent. With that, I'm gonna let the rest of the committee go through the section by section, which obviously a lot of you know it. This is gonna be kind of old hat. They were the amendments that came off our floor. What this body does is we match their amendments with our amendments as conference committee looks at them. So a big part of them are ones we did on both sides. The next level of them is going to be the ones that semi-matched up, and then the last ones are the ones we were apart on. And what you'll see on those is some of them we cut by half, some of them we cut by other percentages. But as we go through it, we came remarkably close to the House overall. And it showed when we went to the conference committee. It was actually not overly difficult to do it, because they've, maybe for the first time, we didn't see a padded budget come over. I really felt like they did a good job of sending us over what was pretty clean. So with that, I'll turn it over to our side to start working our way through it.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, if you would like to follow along, as the good president indicated, much of this information will be redundant to you, but I would refer you, you should have received a packet of your Joint Conference Committee summary report, and it's the legal-sized paper of the charts of those amendments. Again, very similar to what you saw last week associated with those amendments to the budget bill. So this is the Joint Conference Committee summary report based on those amendments to the budget bill. The members of the conference committee will be each explaining what happened in the Joint Conference Committee based on this summary report. I'll be doing the first page, another member will be doing the second page. For ease of understanding, page 1, which would be items 1 through 22, all of those were mere amendments. And so the Joint Conference Committee actually did not have an opportunity to change any of those, as both the House and the Senate agreed to those. With that, I will turn it over to Senator Guru.
Senator Guru.
Thank you. I'm starting at item number 23 in your far left-hand column. These are two technical amendments. The first were deleted, and as you can see, it's all stricken. And number 24 was deleted and further amend Senate Senate third reading amendment number 24A. These are all technical corrections, but at the end of this, the net change is moving $43,000 to the state treasurer's office for treasurer's operations in accordance with the treasurer's letter number 1 to the body. If you go down to 25, also in the state treasurer's office, we adopted House third reading amendment number 1 for $40,000, increasing, using special revenue funds, that's investment revenue, and adding footnote number 11, specifying the increase used for increased compensation for a chief technology officer and to be doubled in the next standard budget. Number 26, we adopted Senate second reading amendment number 20 from A&I General Services, decreasing the amount here, $136,000 for security at the Thyra Thompson building in Casper. Number 27, we deleted and further amended in the A&I. We replaced, let's see, this is the $5,000, yes. We replaced footnote number 1 for the Direct Department of A&I to study the feasibility of providing child care services for state employees. In addition, we adopted Senate third reading amendment number 1. This is using the same $5,000, another portion thereof, to survey the employees, gauging the interest of moving to Riverton to work there, and for all state employees, not just those currently working in Cheyenne. So kind of a blanket survey to see about the possibilities, and you'll see that in the Riverton office building coming up. Then in 29, we deleted Senate third reading amendment number 2 for $500,000 for the state fair, and we adopted House second reading amendment 32 for the Department of Revenue, where we increase by $108,623 in general funds, adding 1 FTE, an accountant requested by the agency. This is in the tax deferment or tax refund programs. And with that, I will turn it over to
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'm starting on item number 31, delete and further amend. The Joint Committee amended footnote number 1 to specify that the appropriation will be reduced dollar for dollar for any appropriation enacted for fiscal year 2024 in 2023, and House Bill 98, House Bill 88, House Bill 99, House Bill 121, and Senate File 136. Number 32 is a delete and further amend. States Parks, you can see that we decreased the amount by $3 million and made it $3 million, so we cut it in half. Item number 33, we decreased, that one is all marked out. 34, state engineer is all marked out. 35, delete again, and this the state engineer again, amended to make reduction of this additional FTE contingent on 2023 House Bill 222. Number 36, Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, we amended footnote number 4, specifying that the $1.5 million general fund appropriation to stop the introduction and spread of invasive plants and aquatic invasive species was intended for immediate action and is not subject to the standard application process. There's no change to that. 37 is all marked out, deleted out. 38 is deleted and adjusted. We decreased it and left it at 50,000. 39 deleted and further amended. The Healthcare Department of Health Joint Committee reduced the Senate proposed reduction by 1/2, $3,755,639 general fund, and the same in federal funds.
and retain the biennialization of the appropriation in the next fiscal biennium. 40, Department of Health, that remained the same. Amends footnote number 15 to change comprehensive waiver to comprehensive and support waivers. And I think that's the end of mine. I don't know who has the next section.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are on items 41 through 53. This would be page 4 of your summary report if you're following along there. So on item 41, we increased $500,000 of the general fund and $500,000 of federal funds. This is matching dollars, specifying that those funds to the Department of Family Services are appropriated for protective services and juvenile justice unit. Again, you remember going through this before. That amendment was adopted. We deleted the amendment for state lands and investments. That's item 42. Going on to item 44, we adopted the House amendment increasing the budget for state lands and investments for the purpose of compensation for another position associated with the policy and planning analyst there. Item number 45, we deleted and further amended. As you recall, we appropriated, the House appropriated $10 million of general fund money to the University of Wyoming for a physician's assistant program. We reduced that appropriation down to $7.5 million. And we reference House Bill 195. And so the monies cannot revert if 195 passes. Item 46, we decreased $500,000 of the general fund to the College of Education for the University of Wyoming. Again, that's nothing new. You've been through this before. Item 47, a Senate amendment of $2 million of the general fund was increased for the purpose of light detection and range data into a statewide digital evaluation model. We deleted the House amendment to the University of Wyoming, appropriated $5,000 for a feasibility study. We deleted a House amendment increasing the budget of $175,000. We deleted a Senate amendment to the Department of Corrections for $250,000 to field services. We deleted a Senate amendment to the Wyoming Business Council for $141,000 for a full-time position within the Business Council. We also deleted a Senate amendment for $30 million to the Business Council Investment Ready Community Grant, which was a mirror amendment with the increase. One was a decrease and one was an increase of that $30 million, effectively canceling those out. And with that, I would turn to Senator Guru to discuss item 50.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President. I'm going to start with item 54, which on the sheet you're looking at is page 5. The first one is the Wyoming Business Council Community Facilities Program. Shows here that we deleted $7.395 million and $104,000. This was from the Strategic Investment and Project Account S13 for Community Facilities Program. Later on, when we get to the Section 300s, you will see part of that money return. So just kind of, we'll be on the lookout for that. Next, number 55, we deleted and further amended House Second Reading Amendment number 20, and the Supreme Court Administration for $140,000. That increase, you recall, 1 FTE and adds footnote number 6, which specifies the increase to be used for 1 staff attorney, but we further amended this footnote to remove the specifics regarding the position. So it's a little more free for them to use how they wish. Number 56, we adopted the Supreme Court Administration deleted footnote number 4, which specified 2 FTEs and $215,840 of general fund were not to be included in subsequent budgets. We deleted that footnote. Number 57, we deleted further amend House Second Reading Amendment 23, the Department of Ed of $280,000 as school foundation money, increasing that 1 FTE footnote number 7 to specify the increase to be used for to fund a position for purposes of approving charter schools. This was further amended by House Third Reading Amendment 10A. Next, number 58, we deleted and further amended House Third Reading Amendment 10, which amends to specify the funds that are contingent upon passage of Senate File 174. This footnote was to clarify that $280,000 is to be sustained at this level for the next fiscal biennium. So that charter schools position will be there if that bill passes through the next biennium. Number 59, we deleted Senate Second Reading Amendment 13 for that same $280,000. So we took the House amendment on that side. And I continue to go to, 63, okay. So number 60, we deleted, this is House Second Reading Amendment number 8. This deleted their position of adding, which we had already deleted. So they agreed with us and deleted the $109,000 for the FTE for the special officer position within a peace officer position in that agency. As you recall, we did add 3 other positions. Now, on for 61 and 62, 61, delete and further amended Second Reading Amendment 41. This is where we start these transfers. And if you reading on the sheet, that's fine, but there's another sheet in your packet that shows a flow chart here, and I'm holding it up. I know I'm not supposed to use props, but if you grab that flow chart, some of these numbers will maybe start to make some sense, but basically all what the good president laid out in his opening statement. Number 61 is we deleted, we deleted 300D, eliminates $40 million in general fund transfers from Wyoming Tomorrow Endowment Fund on the physical profile. HB 30 still includes $60 million transfer to the Wyoming's Tomorrow, resulting in no profited difference between the House and Senate. The JCC decreased this appropriation to $20 million. So that's the Wyoming's Tomorrow deleted down to 20 million or cut down to 20 million. Number 62, House Third Reading Amendment 34. This amendment is for 1.25. This is for the scholarship program for Wyoming's Tomorrow. The House position was at 2.5, and we talked them down to 1.25 million on the scholarship program for Wyoming's Tomorrow. And with that, I will turn it over to Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Vice President. On item number 64, we deleted and further amended. I'm not going to read all those items. They did not change. They just changed with the dollar amount that was transferred. So you can read each one of those that we did. But I would like to read that last one because that is the big one. The Joint Committee amended the collection of transfers to savings in order to transfer up to $367.8 million to the Common School Public Land Fund and contingent upon an unobligated accrued balance of the LSRA of at least $1.4 billion, then we would put $387 million to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. So that's a big one that we talked about with all the money we put into savings. Moving right on to whatever the next number is, 65. We amended this one and took out that 274 million that they had in there as a budget balance or transfer to the LSRA. 66, we deleted and further amended that. We cut that in half. That was 150,000 or 150 million. We cut that to 75 million. 160 million was the governor's projects. We cut that to 80 million. Okay, 67 is delete again. Budget transfers, budget balancers. You see that we deleted those first two and put in, well, we deleted that one too. Then you go right down to 89 there, 4,600,000. You can see those two that we put in there as transfers from education. The Joint Committee amended to deposit in priority order, contingent upon an unobligated accrued balance of the LSRA of, again, 1.54 billion. You've heard that number a couple times. That's what we hope to end up with in the LSRA. So then we'll put 359 million to the Common School Public Land Fund reserve account, and then 274 million to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund reserve account, and 4.6 million to the Hathaway Scholarship reserve account, and 1.2 million to the Excellence in Higher Education reserve account. We suspended tips to the corpus for fiscal year 2023 in the event 2023 HB 89 is not enacted. On to 68. We amended that with the budget balancers. Again, that one's out. It says see note on items 64 and 67. Same way with that next one, 64 and 66. Number 70, we deleted S3015A, and then you can see the notes on 64 and 66. 71, 72, and 73, see the note on 66. We took those all out. And then on to, oops, went the wrong way. Oops. Which one am I on? 80? 74? No, that's not mine. Oh, okay. Okay.
Senator Grew.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Number 74 and number 75 are together, and these are ones that we talked about quite a bit. Section 313, this is the school section. We deleted and further amended Senate Second Reading Amendment 15, and basically at the end, if you read those two together, 74 and 75, delete and further amended, the House Second Reading Amendment 25, the Senate Second Reading Amendment 15. Basically, at the end of the day, as we adopted the House language that said we're going to take that we took it from 50 million to 100 million for schools. We deleted, of course, the call out for any specific school district. We took the House position on $5 million of that to be given to the school building commission to do Mercer studies and capacity studies and any further studies they see fit to determine where the rest of that 95 million should go. And the other position then was to adopt your Senate language that basically said if the school building commission goes through those studies with the 5 million and approves projects, whatever projects they approve, and the Select Committee on School Facilities approves of what the school building commission did, the money, that 95 million, will be appropriated at that moment. So in other words, they do not have to wait for further legislative action, but it has to go through the process from beginning to end. That is numbers 74 and 75. And I know that was debated quite a bit here. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you there, Senator Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Item number 76 is energy matching funds. This is in your section 300. This amends section 321 to include the processing and separation of lithium as permissible uses of the energy matching funds. Number 77, unfortunately, was all crossed out, all marked out. 78 is enterprise inflation. That's the inflation for section 328, which is community colleges. 79 was all marked out, deleted completely. Number 80, unmet housing needs. We heard a lot about unmet housing needs. We deleted the House amendment, and the joint committee decreased the appropriation to 5 million general fund. Number 81, we deleted and further amended. Community facility rehabilitation, you can see there that we put in 2 different amounts to the total of 5.3 million, some from the general fund and from the Senate position, and 2.7 million general fund is for the general purpose of the community facility. So they got 5.385 million out of that. Number 82, we marked that out completely. Property tax reimbursement, that 28,400,000 did not pass. 83 is Section 300 budget balancers transfers. This transfer from LSRA to BRA for purposes budget balancing in the event of other bills with appropriations, tax reductions, transfers, or other JCC action on House Bill Senate File 1.
Thank you. We'll open it up for questions, concerns, comments. Unlike a typical joint conference committee report, by the rules, you're not limited to 2 times and you're not limited to 5 minutes. So with that, open it up for debate, discussion. Discussion or questions? Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on all the decreases that we see throughout the summary. Would it be fair to say that every decrease will be doubled during the next budget? Yes or no? Thank you.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, and as we go through, so the positions that you see, other than as noted, are reoccurring. So if we've added positions, you saw some in the Supreme Court, some of those actually are ongoing and done. The rest of those decreases that you see as a whole are all just cut out of the budget and they're gone. They're not, it's not an ongoing budget. This is supplemental. So those decreases that are there are just cut out of what the supplemental budget was, other than where it's noted. So you've had some of those particular positions actually are increases for the biennium.
Further discussion, questions? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, page 7, number 67. If you go to the new language down there in the bold, and it talks about the transfers. Just a little discussion as to when do those, so that's the sequence in which each one of those accounts fills up. So if you go through there, first thing it goes into is the Common School Permanent Land Fund. It's first the LSRA. That's 1.4 billion. Once we get above 1.4 billion, the next place that money tips into under this footnote is the Common School Permanent Land Fund Reserve account. Once that's filled up, it drops into the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund Reserve account. But Mr. Chairman, just a question is when do those tips occur? Once those accounts, is it annually, biennially? What time does that LSRA get to 1.4 billion that you start to tip? And then when the next one's filled, does the next one tip and then the next one?
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, you're correct. That's exactly. So 1.4, we had it at 1.5. You'll note when we started, we actually moved it. When we got ready to balance the budget, we were short. So we agreed with the House to move it from 1.5 to 1.4. They think it's going to be about June 1st will be when that hits the tip level. When it hits the tip, then these priorities that you see in this bill, the ones that were read, goes on past C, it goes to the Hathaway, and then it goes on to the Excellence Reserve account. It just tips through to fill those. That's existing statute. That's been what's there. We did not change that. Didn't remove it. We left it all where it's at. Then the other really important part that we did to that was we suspended the tips to the corpus in fiscal year 23 if House Bill 89 is not enacted. The reason we did that is if you do it, all of the money over 1.4 would be gone. You wouldn't have it here next year. This way, when those fill, and we do expect them to fill, though actually the LSRA will be probably higher than the 1.4, could be substantially higher, and that money will be available going into the next budget cycle.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the question was, is when does that tip? Is it an annual, or is it, when's that come in? And I think this, one of your members is phoning a friend on that. But just as a curiosity, is
Senator
how
Nethercutt.
often is it once a year that tips?
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look at, I believe this is in your pockets, and it's called the Joint Conference Committee Report. And behind it, in the back of that packet, it's about 12 or so pages. And if you look on page 10 of that, and there's a double G paragraph, and this is referring to this section about the tips. I think before making transfers under this section, the state auditor shall calculate the amount to be transferred under subsections. Under these subsections, any amounts transferred and available for transfer. Hold on, I found it here. Just give me a second. I found it. I lost it. I do think that the good majority floor leader points out a question that could provide further clarity when reading this, but the answer about how those tips and how those appropriations and distributions go can be found on page 9, starting at the double E paragraph, and that goes through those distributions. And then as you can continue into the next pages, there's more detail about when those transfers take place, because this is pretty complicated for what we have done here regarding consolidating of accounts, and when those monies go in and when they tip from the LSRA of the 1.4 billion into these other permanent savings accounts. But I'll get some further clarity. LSO staff is in the back too as well, and they've offered their expertise for any very highly specific questions like that we are not able to come up with off the top. So I'd leave that to you.
Senator Guru. Oh. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I think this is a great time to mention that back earlier, a few weeks ago in the session, we came to you, your Joint Appropriations Committee, your Senate Appropriations Committee, and the other committee that we're on, CapFin, Capital Finance and Investment, came to you with a suite of bills, and we talked about this suite of bills. This is very complicated stuff, and I know your eyes are swimming across pages and looking at all these sheets. As hopefully our friends down the hall work through those bills as well, and we get those bills passed, in the next biennium budget, this is going to get a lot simpler, a lot easier to read, and a lot easier to follow. As we try to endeavor to get the answers to your questions, I just wanted to kind of give you a preview of coming attractions. Thanks to your support.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It kind of goes into my question. I hear the general fund appropriation is going to be about 3.6 billion if everything passes. When we left here last year, we left with a 2.9 billion budget, general fund budget. How much of that 3.6 is going to be ongoing and how much is one time? So another way to phrase it would be, is next year's budget going to be around 2.9 again? Like we've kind of been starting to ratchet down our spending to live with, lower oil and gas revenues and our current belt tightening, all that work we've been doing to tighten our belt on the general fund side. How much of this is going to be ongoing? What's next year's target looking like? Is it going to be 3.6 or is it going to be lower than that?
Senator Driscoll.
Unequivocally less than the 3.6, because you look at what we've actually added is about 400 million. In truth, I'm not sure the 2.9 to 3.6 doesn't really add up, because the general fund spending part of this was 400 and some million, is when you really look at it. And as you go through the list, and I'm just going to go through some of the bigger numbers on it that fall, 3.5 million enterprise inflation community colleges, that's not an ongoing one. 5 million unmanned housing needs, that's not an ongoing one. Community facility rehabilitation, 5.3 million, that's not an ongoing one. 26,550 in the governor's office, not ongoing. WildLink, 8.6, that is an ongoing, I believe, the way we set that up. Healthcare financing, 20,000, that's an ongoing. School energy resources, 300,000 ongoing. School foundation program, 22 million, that was our ECAs. That's likely to be back. We don't know. It depends on what that comes. That number is different. Wildlife Trust Fund Challenge, 958,000. That's not an ongoing. 3 million to the Cultural Trust Fund. That's not an ongoing. 3.7 million on match on the general funds and the health end. That is an ongoing. 7.5 million for the PA program, that's a one-time spending. 500,000 to Department of Family Services match, that'll be an ongoing. 30 million to the Business Council, that is not an ongoing. 20 million to the Wyoming's Tomorrow, that's not an ongoing. 1.2 million to the Wyoming's Tomorrow current scholarships, that's not an ongoing. That pretty well runs us through it. I'm telling you, there's really not lots of ongoing spending here. What we did was a pretty nice job of doing one-time monies, and that's what you do when you have surpluses.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, sir. I think the number that I'm told for ongoing, just for the budget and only the budget, it comes to about 225 million. So that's what I'm told.
Okay, further discussion? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These conversations are incredibly important to have, and it takes stewardship and commitment to evaluate all of the spending and all of the decreasing in funding. But it is also very helpful as we're in this very micro analysis of all of these line items to step back out and look at the big picture of our budget and to really see, are we really increasing spending over time? The answer to that is unequivocally no. And in fact, we have decreased spending over time significantly, but have stayed also fairly static with that. So we're not, I think, allowed to use props, although the data budget book, I'm not sure it could be considered a prop. But if you were to go to your budget book, and I think all of this material too is available on the LSO website, page 160, and you can just see this chart very broadly, it's all fairly static, really, of overall spending. So it's helpful to look at the micro analysis as we evaluate how to do our budgets, both supplemental and the biennial budget, but also to realize we stay pretty stable despite the volatility of our revenue sources. So I think we can be proud of that and the level of fiscal stewardship that has been shown by decades of legislators before us, including here today in this chamber. So I think good work is being done by all, and I'd like to thank everyone for the good and hard questions you've put the JAC through.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, just a tiny bit of follow-up. It's kind of an interesting number. We're going to put $1.3 billion away using a 5% return, which is about what we're getting on these permanent funds. You can expect that this body has now made another $65 million a year of investment income return every year going forward if you just use our averages. Obviously, that goes up and down. But, Mr. Chairman, that's a significant number when you start looking at budgets, that you're actually creating a fund that's going to give us another $65 million a year permanently. And that's kudos to you folks. That's the other half of it is about half of that money's reserve accounts. And I'm not sure where all the idea came. I think one of the good senators in the back, that's one of our officers, was a key part of it. But these reserve accounts will play a key role in that exact question we just had asked, is as these reserve accounts kick in at 5 times spending, they really balance out, assuming we don't just go into a tailspin right off. It allows us to have our budget be much flatter instead of going through these big dips and troughs. And I think you're going to find it gets simpler, and the reserves accounts are going to make it where we have less times that we have to do. I can tell you, since I've been in, We've had 2 times we had $1 billion shortfalls, and 1 time that we've had a amount, which is this year, that is in excess of $1.25 billion.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, sir. You know, I'm new to the Appropriations Committee, but one of the goals that the Senate Appropriations Committee had was to be transparent, and we've done that. And I want to thank the rest of the Appropriations Committee. That has always been a goal. I think we've accomplished that. You all have had more time than since I've been in the legislature to see these numbers. I want to bring to the body's attention that that was a major goal of your Appropriations Committee, to be transparent, to put everything out there for you to look at. And I think that's something that the body should consider. Thank you.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So with that in mind, item 82, you guys must know something that I don't know about the property tax cut bill. It must be dead on arrival in the House if that is, that footnote has been deleted to that, which was the backfill compromise that we came to on the property tax relief. Is it safe to say that the Wyoming residents are not going to get property tax relief on that bill?
Senator Guru.
You want to go point one? I'd just say unequivocally, no. What happened was that in negotiations, the backfill money, just like the exact same conversation we had here on an amendment on another tax bill where it was put in to backfill the money, that amendment went down. Our House colleagues disagreed with us about the backfill and how to do it, but not about, there was no discussion that I was a part of or heard that said anything about not doing tax relief. As a matter of fact, boy, if they would have, I'd have jumped right up because no, that it's just that we looked at it kind of, or they looked at it, I think a lot the way a lot of you looked at it. We're going to wait and see what the tax relief is and wait and see what the school districts, what the towns, counties, and everyone else, all the political subdivisions that may be affected by that come to us and ask us next year in the budget. But by no means is tax reform off the table in any way.
Senator Driscoll.
Yeah, that's absolutely a fact. There's no anticipation of anything on a bill of any kind. I will tell you this, in bills out there, there's over $120 million potential spending. We know that's out there, and that's that budget balancer. That was the last line on the last page. If those bills go through, as you look at your goldenrod, you'll see those amounts go up and down. And you know, that's the one thing we've got, is we've got to balance, constitutionally, we balance our budget. So as those bills either pass or fail, you'll see the numbers go up and down on the goldenrod. One of the ones you'll see is, right now we're doubled up on, if we were to profile on House Bill 84, because it has the same money in it that this budget has in it. So if you put those both in, it's going to put things way out of whack on the goldenrod. We're close enough to the end on it, just sitting there, but there is numbers. It's over $100 million. It's in bills out there that potentially can affect our budget as we go forward.
Further discussion? Further discussion, further questions? Last chance before we proceed to the vote. Okay, Senator Guru?
Yeah, just one thing to amplify on my good friend from Fremont County. For those of you that are new, that we usually do this at about 1 o'clock in the morning on the last day, when everyone's got boxes packed up all over this room with all their stuff in it, car engines running downstairs in the basement, and everybody got 1 foot out the door and say, what? And we vote and we run out the door. I too am very proud of the work that we've been able to do, if for no other reason, whether you agree, disagree, like this, don't like this, doesn't matter. The fact that we're talking about it at a decent hour of the day where we can all be awake, sober, and actually having the good discussion and good debate that we're having today, I think is a credit to all the folks who worked really hard on this. And so I do, and appreciate all your support too, as we went through all this. I know you're hearing this, a lot of this for the third time. We're looking at it for about the 20th time. But really do appreciate, kudos to you for helping us, and look forward to the vote.
Senator Anderson?
Mr. Vice President, I'm new to the committee also, just like the senator from Riverton, and I'd like to compliment you, Mr. Chairman, for the job you did as the chair of the SAC, and I'd like to compliment the previous SAC members, Senator Hicks and Senator Steinmetz, for the great job they did on this. We just finished it up. They did all the hard pulling. So great job by everybody in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Thank you. And the president for his finalization of this thing. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator Nethercott?
Because I don't want to be silent on this, I too would like to express my gratitude to the good work of the Interim Joint Appropriations Committee and to the chairman and to the president for the significant amount of work that went into this. It was actually an enjoyable budget to work on and to work with our members, and I do think that the body of both chambers can be very proud of this year's budget and the process for what that looks like. I too recall, I think every year it was a challenge. The first couple of years, many of us in this chamber were in the Senate. We were here until 1 a.m. Music blaring, exhausted, the last day, have to get it done. It was very stressful. And it's fair to say that most of the body had no idea what they were voting on. It simply was to get a budget out and go home. And so to be able to do this thoughtfully with appropriate critical review and support, I think is a really positive direction of the leadership of the Senate and of both chambers. And so very proud of that work and proud to be part of Senate Appropes.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion. The clerk will please read the signatures on Joint Conference Committee Report 1 on House Bill 1.
Signed by Representatives Nicholas, Larson, Sherwood, Stith, and Walters, Senators Driscoll, Anderson, Guru, and Nethercott.
The motion is that the Senate do adopt the Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 1, and the vote is aye or no. The Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 1. Roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski?
Aye.
Aye. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz excused. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Joint Conference Committee 1, House Bill 1. 20 aye, 10 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 1. Next order of business would be messages from the House. Please, Senator Driscoll.
Privileged floor.
Please.
Thank you. I withheld my remarks waiting on the vote for everybody. would like to join in with everybody, particularly with you, Mr. Chairman, but with your committee and the preceding committee for the amount of work that went into this. It is kind of interesting. It's like being in a football game and you get the ball handed to you at the last quarter, at the last minute. So from that end, I really do thank all of you, and in particular, Larry, Sherry, old committee folks. This all came through a lot of people with a lot of hands on it. And I will tell you, our staff told us this is the first time in 20 years that they've seen this budget be done before the last minute of the last day. That is a huge point of pride to both bodies. We actually got there, and I think it's going to bode well. We've got some other bills that kind of depend on it. I think it actually bodes well. The two bodies are trusting each other to do things well, and I think it's a future for all of us to aspire to. Once again, a huge thank you for the leadership everybody's shown on getting this done, and thank you to the body. It's hard to vote on budgets. It is hard. You got things you want, things you don't want. You lose things, you gain things, and everyone did it with as good a humor as I've ever seen. I think the senator from Bates Creek is awake as far as I know. We've actually been in the past where not just him, but numbers of us have to be brought in off the floor because you're basically asleep because it's the middle of the night. It is refreshing to have it done. It's, look at this, we're at 4:30. Congratulations, everybody, thank you.
Okay, let's, Senator French,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
please.
Everybody to your left, I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, Nina Weber. She is the Wyoming National Committee woman.
Senator Landon, you were standing up? No?
Wasn't.
Okay.
Just clapping, Mr. Vice President.
We have a, Senator Scott.
Mr. Vice President, just one further historical note on the budget. I happened to be here as a lobbyist, actually, in 1975. The last year they did a full budget in the general session. And the process then was the Appropriations Committee met in a conference room downstairs called the Hole, came up only for second and third reading, and spent the rest of their time down there. And about 3 days before the constitutional end of the session, the 40-day session, they brought the budget up, threw it out on the floor and said, have at it. And you'd have a dozen or so people flail away with amendments. And we'll all go back to what the Appropriations Committee said. And nobody, other than the chairman of the committee, and maybe not even them, really understood what was going on. And the process is much more thorough, much more transparent, much more involving everybody else. But that's really a measure of the amount of progress that we've made in that length of time. It really was a poor process in the old days. It's what led to the budget sessions, but it took, there were maybe 30 years where every cycle, the Appropriations Committee would make the process better, more transparent, and develop improvements till we got a system that basically has worked. So it has been real progress in making this institution work. It has taken that length of time, but it has been real progress.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we would be not in order if we didn't recognize the hard work of the budget and fiscal staff and just our support staff. You couldn't have this process that we've done today This is the culmination of 2.5 months of work of those folks, people. So would you join me in giving them a hand?
Senator Landon.
Mr. Vice President, may I have privilege of the floor?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I really appreciated the words of the tall senator from Bates Creek. And just to put things in perspective today, whether you voted for the budget or not, we all get to go home with something that I think is we're going to look back on it, and it's historic. Just to put it in perspective, Mr. Vice President, when I first got down here, we had, I think, about $1.1 billion put away in the state of Wyoming in the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. Today, we voted for a budget that put $1.3 billion in savings. That's something to be really, really proud of, and I really think that you will look back on today as a pretty historic day. And we'll see, but I think it was a big deal, a really, really big deal that's going to benefit the state of Wyoming for a long, long time. And you know, the other piece of it, Mr. President, we invested in this generation also in a couple of different ways along the way, and I think it was a great balance. So thank you very much.
All right, we have a concurrence request. Senator Scott, are you ready on message number 353, requesting concurrence on Senate File 51? I will have that read in.
Message number 353, referencing Senate File 51, School Finance Regional Cost Adjustment.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Vice President, I will move that we do concur with House amendments to Senate File 51, School Finance and Regional Cost Adjustment, and ask the Senate to listen for a moment. The first thing the House did was, you see it at the bottom of the concurrence page, somehow that language is identical to House Bill 77, sponsored by Representative Harshman and others, that died on Committee of the Whole over there. And they managed to stretch the title enough to accommodate that failed House bill. So that's in there. Mr. Chairman, they also did some violence to the sunset date, made it significantly less effective. And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President, I would recommend that we vote no on concurrence. We need to keep sending the message that we think that the House ought to take care of its own bills in Committee of the Whole and not put them in as piggybacks that stretch the title of various good Senate files. So, Mr. Chairman, it's an important bill, but we need to go visit with the House on what they're up to.
Okay, further discussion? Senator Hicks.
Just to reiterate, you've been asked to vote no.
Okay. The motion is that the motion is for the Senate to concur on Senate File 51, report or message 353, and you are asked to vote no. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 51. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whiteman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinsky?
No.
No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz excused. President Driscoll?
Excused.
Excused. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 51 concurrence vote, 29 noes, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 51, and a joint conference committee will be appointed tomorrow. Messages.
From the House of Representatives, February 16, 2023. Message number 375, third reading passed. Mr. President, the Senate file number 71, state loan and bond programs, passed out on third reading. Ayes 62. Message number 373, third reading failed. Mr. Vice President, the Senate file number 88, hunting licenses, weighted bonus point system, failed to pass the House on third reading. Ayes 22, noes 40. Message number 374, concurrence requested. Mr. Vice President, Senate File 91, creation of tenancy by the entirety, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 62. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Reports from standing committees.
February 16, 2023, Mr. Vice President, Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 103, Political Party Affiliation Declaration and Changes, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, and McEwen. No, Senator Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman. Mr. Vice President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 33, engrossed, School Finance, Career Technical Education Grants, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinsky, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinsky, Chairman. Mr. Vice President, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 81, engrossed, Hospital Supplemental Payments Statutory Fix, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinsky, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinsky, Chairman. Mr. Vice President, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 188, engrossed, Wolf Depredation Compensation, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinsky, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinsky, Chairman. Mr. Vice President, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 190, engrossed, Wyoming Value-Added Energy and Industrial Plan, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do not pass. Ayes, Senators Guru, Nethercott, and Salazar. No, Senators Anderson and Kinsky. Senator Kinsky, Chairman.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. Vice President, just a little bit of preview before we close out here tomorrow. We're gonna be back in here at 9:30. I'll announce that, but I want you to, the plan tomorrow is we've got 12 bills on third reading. We've got 8 bills on second reading. I'd like to do 4 or 5 bills for committee of the whole. But if we move through that pretty fast, Mr. Vice President, I think we can be out of here by 1 o'clock tomorrow. That's my goal. I would, if we get bogged down a little bit, I may lay 1 or 2 of those bills back on second reading so we can meet that deadline to be out of here by roughly 1 o'clock. We may work through the lunch hour. I know we have a special treat during lunch tomorrow that we'll try to make sure that we can do that. You'll get clued in on that tomorrow, Mr. Chairman. But with that, Mr. Vice President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 9:30 a.m. on February 17th.
Are there any announcements? Senator Landon.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Your Committee 1 Judiciary will have that informational meeting at 7:30 in the morning with our first responders. regarding suicide and a follow-up of all the work we did last year here in the Senate. The public is welcome to attend in the Supreme Court chamber along with any legislators, but the Joint Committee will be taking that up at 7:30. At 8:30, Mr. Vice President, we will go down to W4 and take up House Bill 94 engrossed Board of Parole Wyoming residency. That's tomorrow morning at 8:30 for the consideration of that bill. Thank you.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your Conference Committee on House Bill 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals Amendments, will meet upon adjournment here soon today in W113.
Thank you, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Your Conference Committee on House Bill 47, that's the Election Equipment Federal Certification, given a little extra advance notice, will meet Tuesday afternoon at 12:30 in room W113. A lot of issues with that bill, so hope we'll see you there.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your actual committee, number 2, Appropriations, will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in Capitol Room E301 and online to hear the following 4 bills. House Bill 64, Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account Obligations. House Bill 208, School Foundation Program Reserve Account Investments. And members of Transportation Committee, just a shout out to you, there'll be two bills up. House Bill 38 engrossed, Wyoming National Guard member referral, and House Bill 59 engrossed, Wyoming National Guard tuition benefits. It would be helpful to the Appropriations Committee to have members or a member of the Transportation Committee present for those bills to help us understand why the need. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nethercutt. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your committee number 5, Senate Agricultural, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee will meet in room 2 and online to hear the following bills. House Bill 17, that's continued from February 14th, and House Journal 3, Wild Horses and Burros Best Management Practices at 5 o'clock, so 12 minutes. Thank you.
Senator Baldwin.
Go ahead there first.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Vice President, Committee number 4, Education, meet tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., room W110 downstairs, House Bill 34, School Finance Mental Health Services.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you for waiting, Mr. Vice President. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Capitol Extension 6, and online to hear House Bill 140, Mental Health Care Access Collaborative Care Model, and House Bill 108, Sale of THC Vaping Devices and Edibles to Minors Prohibited. Also, your Conference Committee on Senate File 9 will meet in room 113 at 7:30 tomorrow morning.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Vice President, another quick announcement for all the senators. You're invited to breakfast tomorrow morning. The Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees will be setting up at 6:30 in the usual spot down in the concourse. Join them, it says, for a discussion of legislative initiatives. Hopefully you won't have to get into that. You can just have some breakfast with them. Thank you.
Further announcements. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Senate shall stand adjourned until 9:30 Friday morning.